And I'll call the meeting. Awesome. We'll call the meeting to order at 10:01 a.m. Beth, will you please do the roll call?
Go by last name. Davis.
Here.
Bilger.
Here.
Leffler.
Here.
McNulty.
Here.
Rosenthal.
Here.
Shepherd. And Smith.
Here.
For CCS, we have Rebecca Malinowski, Deborah Wishmeyer, and Beth Stone.
Thank you so much. Any additions to the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to public comment. Again, seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. I would entertain a motion to approve. The consent agenda is listed.
So moved.
Thank you, Diane.
I'll second.
Thank you, Pam.
Can I request that item D be removed from the consent agenda for further discussion?
Of course. Item D will be removed. Okay, anything else that needs to be set aside? Then we'll move forward with the approval of the consent agenda items A through C. Beth, would you take a vote?
Davis.
Yes.
Bilger.
Yes.
Leffler.
Yes.
McNulty.
Yes.
Rosenthal.
Yes.
And Smith.
Yes. Thank you. And apologies, that was both of my phones ringing simultaneously. Okay, moving on from the consent agenda into business. For the executive. Oh,
Sorry, can we do 5D?
oh, 5D now, you bet. The additional inland wind trust transfer.
So Rebecca asked me to pull it from the consent agenda.
I
Sorry.
sure did. Thank you, Lauren. Beth and I sent an update yesterday with a revised not to exceed amount for that transfer and just some more details. And then overnight we had a massive deposit. Sorry, not to exceed is wrong again. So I would ask that we adjust the not to exceed amount from 150 to 200,000. The current balance is $150,433. But just in case we have any additional deposits come in, my $50,000 cushion got eaten up with one deposit. So that is my request.
Okay, any further discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I would move to amend the item 5A for the additional amount of the wind trust transfer to 200,000.
Thank you, Lauren. That's 5D, correct? Yep. And a second?
A second.
I'll second that.
Oh, I think we got Scott first, Jeannie. Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, Beth, if you please.
Sure. Davis.
Yes.
Bilger.
Yes.
Leffler.
Yes.
Pam, I think there we go.
Yes. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. McNulty.
Yes.
Rosenthal.
Yes.
And Smith.
Yes. Okay, thank you. So now take two, on to business, the executive committee orientation. Turn it over to Rebecca.
I've included a document in your packet outlining committee responsibilities, which are largely just pulled from the bylaws, and summarizing where to find key documents. I met with Jeannie last week and we talked through CCS things at her request. So thank you for that time, Jeannie. I believe, oh, maybe not. I was like, oh, we've all been on executive committee before. I just think Lauren has been on every committee because she is so competent and smart and wonderful. But I'm happy to walk through this document, but I also don't want to take a bunch of time if these are things that you're all familiar with. So I will pause and see where, if anywhere, there are questions or concerns.
Actually, I have a question. I don't know if this is the right spot or not, but it was about the responsibilities for signing checks. So you have the two officers do it and then two of the employees. But I'm curious if the executive committee ever entertained mechanical check signing for the executive officers that are supposed to sign.
We had talked about it shortly after I started, maybe like 2018. And I believe at that time our auditor just discouraged it and we didn't pursue it further. I'm happy to discuss it again with the accountant and the auditor, because I love for everyone's lives to be easier.
It does make things easier. We switched to it a few years ago and it's made my life easier on the administrative side. Just the biggest thing is when you have a big stack of checks, sometimes the signature will get missed. And banks usually don't look at two signature requirements, but sometimes they do, and we've had checks returned. So it saves time, energy, all that, as long as you have checks and balances and confidence in the people doing it. Something to consider. I don't have to sign them, so I don't really care. I'm just throwing it out there.
I'm happy to request that Beth gets more information and we can bring it back to the committee for further discussion.
If it makes it more efficient for the staff, yes.
And if you use positive pay, which I think you do,
We do.
then that takes another worry away.
Yeah, we've certainly had situations where it's like, oh, we missed a check. Like, let's go find someone to sign it. So I do think that there are benefits. So we're happy to get some more information, especially with the change in bank, and see where that takes us.
Thank you so much. So, thank you for the thorough information regarding the orientation. Certainly, if any one of us has questions, we can follow up at any time as well. Case is not closed on this one. But if there are no further questions right now, okay, then we'll move on to potential members. Please, Rebecca, and thank you.
Yeah, we are really excited to report that Warren Newport's board has voted to approve the CCS IGA. So I am working on their membership proposal that'll come to you all in September. And what I mentioned to Deborah just as we were getting started before the meeting, I'm trying to get some more information on the amount of user licenses that we have cooking at any time. Our newest libraries, when they've joined, have, for the most part, requested a lot of licenses, I think more than they need, since we're on a concurrent user base. And there's a little bit of grumbling from Innovative that Warren Newport is already an Innovative customer, so they don't want to like give us the same good pricing they've given to our non-Innovative members that have joined. So my solution is we'll just not buy as many licenses if they don't want to support our pricing. So Bob is doing some research for me on that, so that will potentially affect only in a positive way for Warren Newport and the Rails grant fund that they'll request. And that will also play into a potential membership request from Mount Prospect. So Warren Newport's anticipated go live is October of 2023. We'll start the project in January, late January, early February, and have a kind of like 9-month project. And then last week, I met with Sue, who reported that the new strategic plan at Mount Prospect includes assessing and joining essentially a consortium, and CCS is their top pick at this time. I wanted to report what she shared with me, which is that in all of her surveys to community members, they didn't specifically ask, like, should we join a consortium? Do you wish you got holds a different way or anything like that? But it came up in open-ended replies, like, why isn't our catalog more like the Des Plaines catalog? Why can't we see stuff in our catalog? So I think that's a testament to, some great marketing teams out at the libraries who are doing some great customizations and making things look snazzy, as well as the user testing happening within CCS to make things accessible, and just the power of resource sharing. So the next step is Mount Prospect will submit a membership application, which will include the data we need to give them a firm quote. Right now, I have some like rough numbers that we've shared with them. Their go live date is flexible right now. Their existing contract with Cersei Dynix, they're on Horizon, runs through 2026, but she would like to go live with CCS before that and has budgeted to buy out, I think like a year, maybe 2 years of her contract. So the earliest we'd go live based on the CCS project schedule would be October 2024. But we haven't kind of narrowed that down yet. I did offer, I'm like, if you want to really push things, we could just wrap you in with Warren Newport. And she was tempted, but ultimately declined, which I think was a smart choice given the current timeline. So that is what I know about prospective members. I think it's very, very exciting. I think there are 2 libraries that would be a great fit for CCS.
100%.
And
That's
at that time, you
really
wouldn't
exciting.
be the biggest library anymore. In and out.
That is really
I-
exciting.
I haven't had enough time to appreciate it being the largest.
We'll just count statistics a different way, depending on who I'm talking to every day. You're like, you're the biggest today, Jeannie.
Geographically.
Oh, I love it. Well, thank you for the update. Any questions or comments for Rebecca on this topic? Or for anyone? Doesn't have to just be for Rebecca. Okay, well then let's move along to the innovative updates. Again, Rebecca, thank you for giving us context and pointing out the important stuff.
Yeah, I can issue a short update. As noted in the packet, Deborah was working with Innovative to start e-content testing in Vega this week. Unfortunately, that first test did not go as planned, but that's why we test in the partner environment on the test server where everything is out of the public's eye. So Deborah will continue to work with Innovative to troubleshoot. Do you have anything to add on that, Deborah?
I have a small piece of good news. As Rebecca noted in the packet, we were initially testing the Hoopla integration, which will work in Vega slightly different than it works currently with PowerPack and Polaris. We did have a successful sync of a small number of Hoopla records for the Algonquin branch yesterday. It was limited to about 6,500 records that were able to be pulled into Vega through the API. It is a small fraction of the 1.5 million records that they would have expected to be pulled in, but I do have a meeting with Innovative this afternoon, at which point they'll give us an update on what their development team has been investigating over the past couple of days.
And the e-content is one of 2 big blockers that we have before moving forward with our beta libraries for a soft launch. So our intention is to be able to present Vega as it exists today to governing board in October for assessment, essentially, and that in January, assuming these blockers have been met, that governing board would vote to move forward with the soft launch and potential go live of Vega. As discussed at previous executive committee meetings, although we do have some new members, because the timeline had been pushed back so much, we've really kind of pulled back in our active engagement with the partner program. So previously, Deborah was, as always, being very proactive and every time there was a shift, she like rewrote the schedule and rewrote the schedule and rewrote the schedule. That's not sustainable. So we pulled back on that. So we don't have a firm schedule yet. We're really just monitoring the development. So our goal is that in October, we can do, you know, a really robust demo and talk through the benefits and compromises that we would see with Vega. But honestly, as of today, I don't know that we'll be there yet. And as I have shared with Innovative repeatedly to lots of people at length, they're tired of hearing it. Essentially, with the Warren Newport project coming up, like if we don't feel comfortable that we can onboard them with Vega, like we're not going to go live with Vega in 2023 because we're not going to bring Warren Newport on and then disrupt their catalog again. So they are well aware that this is like a ticking clock. And as we've discussed before, but just to reiterate, if we determine that the partner program's not for us because of timing, because features, whatever, we still have PowerPack. We haven't invested any cash money. We've invested lots of staff time, but we haven't committed any funds to Vega. So then our next steps would be to decide, are we happy with PowerPack for the time being, or do we want to do an RFP for a discovery tool, like, and include Vega and BiblioCommons and, you know, maybe an open source tool? We're not there yet, but those would be the next steps. So I just want to keep reiterating that we're not like committed to Vega. I think it's going to be a really good product. It's really just a question of timing for us, as always.
Okay, thank you very much. Questions for Rebecca or discussion on this topic?
I have a quick question. Have we heard anything from Glenview as far as BiblioCommons, since you mentioned that?
Yes, I did ask Deborah to follow up because we hadn't heard anything. They were just off working, which I love. Deborah, do you want to share your what you had learned?
Sure, it sounds like things are going really well on the BiblioCommons Glenview end. They completed the mapping process, which like translate our Polaris data to the BiblioCommons corresponding fields. So they have received their sort of like test instance of the BiblioCommons catalog. The way it's set up is they will have basically two interfaces, one for just Glenview materials, and then one for all CCS materials. That way patrons can toggle back and forth between the Glenview collection and the CCS collection. It sounds like they're still doing just some initial testing and review to make sure everything came over as expected, at which point they will be sharing the links to their test BiblioCommons catalog with CCS so that we can do some exploring on our own and make sure everything looks good.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments on this topic? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the office building updates. And again, Rebecca, thank you.
Love it. So we're finally getting a new roof here at the CCS office space after our roof has been leaking on us for 5 years. I don't think this will really affect members. We're not planning on having in-office events, but there will be some work happening at our building this summer. The more exciting stuff we sent via email yesterday. We did receive initial proposals from the 3 buildings we had narrowed down to. And unfortunately, due to timing, we are meeting with our real estate agent after this meeting on Friday instead of before, just due to schedules. So my understanding is that these are preliminary proposals and there will still be additional negotiation based on what we had heard from Jonathan. You know, previously we would expect more, oh gosh, Beth, what's the word? Like rent abatement, lease concessions.
Questions.
As we go through the negotiation process. And you'll notice that one building, we have turnkey quotes. Essentially, they you know, as opposed to giving us any concessions for a build out, they just want to do the build out the way they want to do it, according to our layout needs. At this time, we only have the financial information from the real estate agent, but we should be getting like their full proposals later this week. So we're moving forward. I anticipate we'll have a more robust update with more details and analysis for the September meeting, including what our next steps are. This is very much a learning process for me. Like, what are we doing? But Jonathan has been great and very patient as I've asked him a million questions. So we are still looking for a move in next summer. Our lease is up in August, but we are hoping to move a few months early to avoid coinciding with like the Warren Newport training mania that will ensue at the end of summer. Jeannie?
Yeah, so that answers one of my questions, which was about the timeline, but I also, just because I haven't been here, so I apologize if everybody else knows this, but have you seen these spaces? Is there any space that you're leaning toward?
Yeah, so last month, 2 months ago, Beth and I went with Jonathan and visited 5 buildings after having done online review of buildings with available space in our geographic area. So we narrowed that down from like 45 or something nuts to 5, and we toured those spaces and narrowed those further to these 3. Beth and I have different favorites. Which is fine. I think the short story is that any of these buildings would be really suitable for us, and all 3 of them have space that could work for CCS. There are benefits and trade-offs to each one that I'm hoping to put into something more coherent for our next meeting. And I do want to get some CCS staff input as well. So my preferred building is the one in Lincolnshire, and to me the biggest drawback is its location. While it is right on 294, which makes it, you know, pretty easily accessible, it is the furthest from our current office space and kind of like the most out of the way. That is the building that has is offering the turnkey solution. So we saw 2 spaces there that we really liked. One would be like the smallest space we could fit in, and that was built out. It was a complete spec suite, furnished, and it's like, oh yeah, I could see this. We could move right in, and here's where everyone would sit, and here's where stuff would go. With that one, there's like a little bit less storage space for our mountains and mountains of file cabinets, but like I think it would be workable. The other spaces in that building is the largest space and would give us, I think, space for 2 small conference rooms in our meeting area. And just is like the smallest little corner suite you've ever seen. So there's windows all the way around the building, or all the way around the office space, which I really like. All 3 of the buildings have conferencing space available in the building. So that particular complex has 3 meeting rooms for tenants. One is a large auditorium that seats like 150. One is a meeting room that seats up to like, I think 50 maybe in theater seating, but then like 30, I think governing board would be really nicely fit in that room with tables. And then there is also a boardroom size room available. The other 2 buildings also have conferencing, but just have like the one large room that seats between like 40 and 80, depending on the space. They all have AV built in, chair, like just very, very nice to not have to plan to, you know, cycle around unless we want to do a library tour. The other 2 buildings are very near to each other. They're on opposite sides of Lake Cook Road. So one has slightly higher taxes than the other. And I would say they're again, they're all three very comparable buildings in terms of like, they all have plenty of parking, they all have these meeting spaces, they all have food service options for staff and guests. Like if you were coming to the office for a meeting and wanted to just like stay and grab lunch, you could go down to the cafeteria instead of driving to Palm Court or Starbucks or whatever. So the building that Beth prefers, I think, is the best location, right? Is Riverwalk your favorite, Beth?
No, Lincolnshire. That's why I was so surprised you said that.
Yeah, Beth's favorite was Riverwalk, which I do
I
think
think
is a better
No, I think
location.
the concern with Lincolnshire for me was just location, in regards to, like you already spoke to, but of the buildings we saw, I feel like it had the best options for us.
So I think it'll come down to some negotiation and, you know, where we can land on the lease. I did note in the update we sent, one of the big concerns we have with this building is that we have this 10-year lease that, like, you know, the situation changed for CCS and we're stuck with this lease that we can't get out of, and it's been a real hassle for us over the past 6 years. So the lease term that has been proposed by a real estate agent is a 7-year lease, 7 years, 7 months. But at 5 years, there's an option for us to cancel the lease. And the buyout would essentially be paying back some percentage of the capital improvements made on our behalf, or the lease concessions, if we did want to get out of the lease. So the longer the lease term, the more they'll give us up front in terms of doing the build out for us or covering costs or giving us X number of free months rent. So again, I haven't seen the full proposals on how they responded to, you know, the lease term, or if they said, oh, well, if you did 2 more years, we'd do whatever. So all three are really good options. And I think in a previous packet, we included maybe the addresses or links, but I can send those out if you want to look at them to everyone, because it's interesting for sure. Just the variety that's out there. Apparently Beth and I have the same favorite. Who knew?
Thank you. That's helpful.
Excellent. Well, and Rebecca, from what I'm seeing, you said it might be new to you, but I really appreciate that you're reaching out to experts, you're learning all you can about it, you're asking all of these great questions. I feel very confident in what you're doing, so thank you very much. All right. Any other questions or comments about the office building updates? Okay, then we'll move on to reports. No president's report. How about from our secretary
No report.
and our treasurer?
No report.
Okay, and then committees and groups, there's a summary provided. Did anyone have any questions, or Rebecca, anything you wanted to focus on? No?
I have no update on that.
Okay. So then we'll give it back to Rebecca for the executive director report.
It was a shorter report this month, which is a delight for everyone, I'm sure. So I don't have any updates outside of what's in the packet, unless there are questions about these or any other goings on.
All right, well, seeing none, no additional business to conduct. Unless there are any objections, I would adjourn the meeting at 10:29 a.m. All right, then we'll make it so. Jeannie and I were having fun with our Star Trek references.